Okay, let's unpack this. When we talk about figures who have shaped recent history, few loom as large or, frankly, as complex as Barack Obama.
Right.
His story isn't just about a presidency, is it? It's this whole journey that began, far from the political spotlight and really impacted the entire globe.
Absolutely. And what we have here is a really incredible stack of sources, a comprehensive overview that lets us peel back some of those layers.
Yeah, peel back the layers of his life and career.
And what's truly fascinating, I think, when you dive into this material is seeing how much crucial detail often gets overlooked.
Mm.
When we just focus on the White House years.
Exactly.
So this deep dive hopefully will offer you a more complete picture, connecting the dots from his really unique upbringing to his enduring legacy, which is, still debated.
Right. So our mission today is really to go beyond those familiar headlines. We want to extract the truly important nuggets, maybe some surprising facts, those aha moments that will leave you feeling genuinely well-informed about the 44th president. You'll get a kind of shortcut to understanding the man, his policies, and the profound impact he had and, well, continues to have.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, Barack Obama's story starts in Honolulu, Hawaii. That makes him the only U.S. president born outside the contiguous 48 states.
Which is already pretty remarkable.
It is. He was born to an 18-year-old American mother. Her ancestry is diverse European, possibly even some African-American roots way back.
Yeah, I saw that connection to John Punch, the enslaved man from the 17th century. Fascinating.
Right. And his father was a 27-year-old Luo Kenyan, so just imagine that blend of cultures and perspectives shaping a young mind from the very beginning.
And this multiracial heritage, it was clearly a core part of his early identity struggle. He wrote about it himself, didn't he?
Yeah.
Trying to reconcile social perceptions, figure out where he fit in.
Yeah.
And it's also quite interesting, given his later political path, that his mother's family history apparently ties him to distant relatives of figures like George W. Bush and Dick Cheney.
Small world, huh?
It really is. But what these early experiences seem to show isn't just diversity, but this consistent pattern of navigating complex, often conflicting identities and systems.
Which you could argue became a hallmark of his political approach later on.
Exactly.
And it gets even more fascinating. For a big chunk of his childhood, ages 6 to 10, he lived in Jakarta, Indonesia.
Right. His mother remarried an Indonesian man.
Yep. And he spoke Indonesian fluently as a child. He went by Barry back then, too, a nickname he kept until he visited Kenya in 1980.
And speaking of those formative years, the sources are pretty candid about his teenage experiences.
They are. He's been open about using alcohol, marijuana, even cocaine. Part of a group called the Choom Gang, apparently.
Which was slang for smoking marijuana.
Right. So you have to wonder, how did all these experiences living abroad, different cultures, these personal challenges, how did they shape his worldview, his resilience?
Well, especially factoring in what the sources mention about his stepfather's hard-headed assessment of how the world works, it seems like it might have instilled a certain pragmatism.
A pragmatic approach, yeah. And an understanding of different perspectives, maybe.
Possibly.
So after Indonesia, he moves back to Hawaii, lives with his maternal grandparents, attends Punahou School on a scholarship.
A prestigious school.
Very. Then Occidental College in California. That's where he gave his first public speech, calling for disinvestment from South Africa. So early signs of global awareness there. Then he transferred to Columbia University, got his BA in political science and English literature, but his path wasn't straight to law school then, was it?
No, and this is really key, I think. Before law school, he worked as a financial researcher for a bit,
Okay.
then a project coordinator. And critically, he spent 3 years as a community organizer on Chicago's South Side.
That grassroots experience.
Exactly. With the Developing Communities Project, the Gamaliel Foundation, it was foundational, gave him this direct understanding of community needs mobilization, long before Harvard Law.
Right. Real world stuff.
And here's a surprising detail from the sources. Apparently, he proposed twice to an anthropologist, Sheila Miyoshi Yeager, before he even met Michelle.
No kidding.
Yeah, but her parents turned him down.
Wow. It's wild how life takes different turns. So then Harvard Law, he makes history there, first black president of the Harvard Law Review.
Which got national media attention at the time, led to the book deal for Dreams from My Father.
Right. Graduates magna cum laude. Then he goes back to Chicago, teaches constitutional law at the University of Chicago Law School for 12 years.
And he also directed Illinois' Project Vote during that time, a big voter registration campaign,
Yeah.
registered about 150,000 African Americans.
So you see this blend, don't you? Academic rigor, practical activism,
Right.
setting a clear path. So how does this personal background connect to the public figure? I mean, his personal life, while often kept private, has some fascinating aspects.
It does. He met Michelle Robinson in 1989 at the Sidley Austin law firm where she was actually his advisor.
Right, she was technically his boss for a summer?
Sort of, yeah. And apparently she rejected his initial requests for a date.
Huh. Persistent, though. They started dating, got engaged in 91, married in 92, and they have two daughters, Malia and Sasha.
And the sources note they were conceived through IVF after Michelle experienced a miscarriage, something she's spoken openly about more recently.
Which is important context. Now, what about his religious background? That seems like an evolution, too.
It really does. He wrote in The Audacity of Hope that he wasn't raised in a religious household, described his mother as detached from religion, but spiritually awakened,
Interesting phrasing.
and his father as a confirmed atheist. He actually became a Protestant Christian by choice later in life.
Through his community work.
Yeah, drawn to the precepts of Jesus Christ through his work with black churches in Chicago. Though, after leaving Trinity United Church of Christ back in 2008 amidst some controversy.
Right, the Reverend Wright situation.
Exactly. He and his family have attended various Protestant churches since then, but reportedly not on a regular basis. It seems like a personal faith journey shaped by community.
And here's a really surprising detail, kind of endearing, I thought. He's not superstitious, apparently, but he carries what he calls a whole bowl full of items for inspiration.
Oh yeah, like what?
Well, things like rosary beads from Pope Francis, a little Hindu Hanuman figurine, a Coptic cross from Ethiopia, a small Buddha statue, even a metal poker chip that was a lucky charm from some motorcyclists in Iowa.
Wow, that's quite a collection. Really diverse.
It is. A literal mini United Nations in his pocket, as he apparently described his own family once. You know, relatives who look like Bernie Mac and relatives who look like Margaret Thatcher.
That collection really does highlight those diverse influences, doesn't it? Religious traditions, personal connections from all over. It's like a tangible reflection of that complex background.
It speaks to his comfort with complexity, maybe.
I think so.
Yeah.
A multiplicity of perspectives.
Okay, so before the presidency, he obviously had to climb the political ladder. He cut his teeth in Illinois politics.
Right? Elected to the Illinois Senate in 96.
And the sources say he quickly gained bipartisan support there. Worked on ethics reform, healthcare reform.
He championed laws increasing tax credits for low-income workers, pushed welfare reform, childcare subsidies,
Yeah.
practical stuff.
And he also led efforts on criminal justice reform, monitoring racial profiling, mandating videotaping of homicide interrogations. Illinois was the first state to do that.
That's significant. But he did have a setback in 2000, right?
He did, lost a primary race for the U.S. House, but obviously that didn't stop him.
No, and that period really shows his pragmatic approach to getting legislation passed,
Yeah.
building coalitions, even across the aisle.
So when he ran for the U.S. Senate in 2004, what really set him apart?
Well, a big thing was his early opposition to the Iraq War. He was speaking out against the Bush administration's push for invasion back in 2002, even before it started.
Addressing anti-war rallies, that was a key differentiator at the time.
Absolutely. Many Democrats were more cautious then.
And that 2004 Senate victory,
Hmm.
it wasn't close, was it?
Not at all. A landslide, 70% of the vote. The largest margin in Illinois history, apparently.
Wow. And that success, coupled with the keynote address at the 2004 Democratic National Convention.
Oh, that speech.
Yeah.
Viewed by 9 million people.
It just launched him onto the national stage almost overnight, a really rapid ascent.
Absolutely. From state senator to national figure, just like that.
Okay, so let's jump into the presidency itself. 2 terms, 2009 to 2017. What were some of the defining domestic policies right off the bat?
Well, one of his very first acts was signing the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act.
Right, tackling pay discrimination.
And reauthorizing the State Children's Health Insurance Program, SEIP, expanding coverage for millions of kids, early priorities.
And he also made those historic Supreme Court appointments.
Yes, Sonia Sotomayor, the first Hispanic-American justice, and Elena Kagan. That meant 3 women were sitting on the court simultaneously for the first time.
Significant milestones. But the biggest challenge early on was the economy, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. The 2008 financial crisis hangover, that was the defining early challenge, really set the tone.
So the response was the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act.
Yep, that massive economic stimulus package, trying to boost jobs, investment, plus the intervention in the auto industry.
The auto bailout. Controversial, but many economists now say it averted a much deeper depression.
That's the general consensus, yes. Bold actions in a moment of crisis.
And then there was Dodd-Frank.
Right, the Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. The biggest change to financial regulation since the Great Depression, really aimed at preventing a repeat.
We also remember his push for gun control, especially after the Sandy Hook shooting.
A really tragic moment. He signed executive orders, urged Congress for stricter laws, but the legislative efforts mostly stalled, didn't they?
They did. And maybe for our space enthusiasts, he shifted NASA's direction somewhat, ended the Constellation program's focus on the moon.
And favored Mars missions, commercial spaceflight, and Earth science instead. A different vision for space exploration.
Now, what about social policy? Particularly on race, that seems like a complex area during his presidency.
It really is. The sources suggest that while he often avoided overt references to race, maybe more than some predecessors.
Trying to be post-racial, perhaps?
Perhaps. But one study suggests his administration actually implemented stronger policy actions benefiting African Americans than any since the Nixon era.
Interesting contrast.
But at the same time, racial tensions definitely heightened during his terms. Events like the killings of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, that led to the Black Lives Matter movement.
And public perceptions were mixed, weren't they? Some criticized him for showing too much empathy for police. Others faulted him for condemning racial bias too strongly.
It was a very difficult line to walk, highlighting the persistent challenges of racial justice, even with the first black president in office.
On LGBT rights, though, the administration made really significant strides.
Undeniably. He signed the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act,
Expanding federal hate crime law.
lifted the ban on travel to the U.S. for people with HIV, and crucially, signed the Don't Ask, Don't Tell Repeal Act.
Allowing gay and lesbian people to serve openly in the military for the first time.
And later, his administration ended the policy barring transgender people from serving openly as well,
And then the big one in 2012.
becoming the first sitting U.S. president to publicly support same-sex marriage. That was a major turning point.
Huge. And he doubled down in his second inaugural address, calling for full equality, a real cultural shift.
Definitely marked a significant evolution on that issue during his time in office.
Okay, shifting gears to foreign policy. His administration signaled a new era initially, right? With Russia, Europe.
Yeah, the reset with Russia.
Yeah.
And he reached out to the Muslim world with that big speech at Cairo University early on.
But foreign policy is always complicated. There was the drone program.
Highly controversial.
Yeah.
Especially the drone strike in Yemen that killed Anwar al-Awlaki, an American citizen and imam. That sparked huge debates about due process.
Right. And he also authorized support for the Saudi intervention in Yemen, proposed arms deals, though he did halt some sales later after that targeted funeral caused an outcry.
A complex balancing act in the Middle East.
His foreign policy was also defined by ending the Iraq War, withdrawing combat troops by August 2010.
A major campaign promise fulfilled. But then U.S. forces had to return in 2014 to combat the rise of ISIL.
The Islamic State group, yeah.
Uh-huh.
A new threat emerged. And in Afghanistan.
He initially increased troop levels, the surge, but later began reducing them. Still, troops remained there throughout his presidency.
But here's an unforgettable moment, a real aha moment for the country. Operation Neptune Spear.
The raid that killed Osama bin Laden in Pakistan in May 2011.
Huge news. Spontaneous celebrations across the U.S. A defining moment of his first term.
Absolutely. And another significant foreign policy achievement, maybe less dramatic but still historic, was the Cuban thaw.
Right, restoring relations with Cuba after decades of hostility. Pope Francis played a role as intermediary there.
He did, and Obama became the first sitting U.S. president to visit Havana since Calvin Coolidge back in 1928, a major diplomatic breakthrough.
Now, relations with Israel, always complex.
Very. His administration increased military aid and cooperation, but there were public disagreements too, opposing Israeli settlement construction in East Jerusalem.
And abstaining on that UN Security Council resolution condemning settlements, which drew strong criticism from Prime Minister Netanyahu.
A tense relationship at times, trying to balance security partnership with pushing the peace process.
And then there was the Iran nuclear deal, the JCPOA.
The Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, hailed by supporters as a major step towards preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. More hopeful world, as some put it.
But also widely criticized by opponents, both in the U.S. and allies like Israel, who felt it didn't go far enough or gave too many concessions.
A landmark agreement, but deeply divisive.
What about Libya, that intervention in 2011?
That led to Gaddafi's overthrow. Obama himself later called the lack of planning for the aftermath the worst mistake of his presidency.
A stark admission, highlighting the risks and unforeseen consequences of intervention.
Indeed. And Syria was another incredibly difficult challenge. He called for Assad to step aside, authorized rebel training programs.
Which were later deemed failures, largely.
Right. And then there was the red line over chemical weapons. He pledged action, but ultimately pursued a diplomatic deal with Russia to remove them.
Though reports of chlorine gas attacks continued.
Yes. And Russia itself became a major challenge, especially after the invasion of Crimea in 2014. Sanctions followed, and then the allegations of interference in the 2016 U.S. election.
Setting the stage for a lot of the geopolitical tension we still see today.
Definitely.
So what about his time after the White House? What does all this mean for his post-presidency? He hasn't exactly been quiet.
No, not at all. Since leaving office in 2017, he's remained politically active. Campaigned for candidates, including Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
And he's gotten into content creation in a big way.
He really has. That deal with Netflix for their production company, Higher Ground, they won an Academy Award for American Factory.
Right. And the podcast with Bruce Springsteen, Renegades, born in the USA. He even won an Emmy for narrating our great national parks and Grammys for his audiobooks.
Quite the post-presidency career arc.
He's also weighed in on contemporary issues, hasn't he?
He has. The sources note his criticism of wokeness and call-out culture at an Obama Foundation summit in 2019, suggesting a more, maybe, nuanced take on social progress and activism discourse.
Interesting. And how's he viewed now? Public approval?
Generally quite high. His approval ratings have remained relatively strong since leaving office, often ranked among the more popular recent presidents.
And internationally, too.
Foreign perceptions were also strong throughout his presidency. Remember, he won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2009, very early on.
Which itself drew both praise and criticism at the time, given he'd just started.
Exactly.
So the sources also get into the legacy debate. How is history starting to view him?
It's still unfolding, of course, but you see different perspectives. Some historians credit him as a highly effective campaigner, a great orator.
Definitely that.
With a keen sense of how government works. They point to successes like the stimulus, Dodd-Frank, the Affordable Care Act.
But others note a kind of paradox.
Yeah, suggesting he was maybe a very effective policymaker, but not a tremendously successful party builder. The Democrats lost a lot of ground at state and congressional levels during his terms.
And some describe him as disappointingly conventional in certain areas. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that critique often comes from those who hope for more fundamental systemic change. The idea that maybe he didn't challenge entrenched systems as much as they'd anticipated, despite breaking that huge historical barrier as the first black president.
So a mix of major achievements and maybe some unmet expectations.
That seems fair. His most significant legislative win is widely seen as the Affordable Care Act. That fundamentally changed healthcare access.
No question.
And his advancement of LGBT rights, ending Don't Ask, Don't Tell, the transgender military ban. Those were major shifts.
But then you have Human Rights Watch calling his human rights record mixed, citing things like the escalation of drone strikes.
Right. It's rarely simple. On the environmental front, though, he took significant action. Permanently banned new offshore drilling in large parts of the Atlantic and Arctic.
And created or expanded 29 national monuments. Protected more land and water than any other president.
A substantial environmental legacy there.
So as you can see, when you really dive deep into Barack Obama's life, it reveals this truly fascinating, multi-layered individual.
Absolutely.
His journey from Honolulu through Indonesia, Chicago to the White House. It was shaped by such a unique blend of experiences, a constant evolution of thought and policy.
And his impact stretched across everything. Domestic policy, foreign affairs, healthcare, human rights, leaving a complex but undeniable mark on America and the world.
Yeah, truly undeniable.
And his story, I think, it really challenges us, doesn't it? To consider what it means to lead in such a complex world, how personal background shapes policy, and just the enduring nature of a legacy, how it keeps being debated and redefined long after someone leaves office.
So thinking about all this, what stands out to you, our listener, as maybe the most surprising aspect of his journey? And how might that understanding shape your own perspective on leadership, its challenges, its responsibilities, especially today? Something to mull over.